Okay, Wanda, you may
All
begin.
right. Thank you, Madam Liaison. It's good to see everybody. It's been a little bit since we've convened as a full committee, though much of the work of the committee has been ongoing. This is the open meeting of the Committee on Oversight. My name is Wanda Ward, Chair of the committee, and I'm accompanied by the committee's Vice Chair, Scott Stanley. Ann, will you take the roll?
Yes, I will. Aaron Dominguez, we said he had already RSVP'd no. Yolanda Gill. Jeffrey Isaacson. You're here. I've seen you.
I'm here. Sorry, I was muted.
Yep. Oh, it's okay. Willie May. Scott Stanley.
Here?
Kayvon Stassen. Beverly Watford.
Here.
Great. And other board members, Heather Wilson.
Here.
All right. Wanda, you may proceed.
Thank you, Ann, and welcome again to everyone. Our NSBO liaisons are Ann Bushmiller, Portia Flowers, and Alexandra Sershell. Our executive secretary is Laura Slatton. Today, we will first receive a presentation from the Office of the Inspector General, the outside auditors at Kearney and Company. The presentation will cover the results of two audits, the FY25 Financial Statements Audit and the Federal Information Security Management Act, or FISMA, Performance Audit of NSF's Information Security Program for 2025. Next, we will have a discussion of data on research misconduct. The OIG semi-annual reports contain charts displaying incidents of misconduct the OIG reviewed and acted on in the study period. Can some of these data be more useful to the committee's oversight responsibility if they were presented over time instead of as a snapshot of information in the semi-annual report? Finally, we will briefly review the Chief Financial Officer's report for the last quarter. Please remember to stick to these topics as noticed in our agenda during the meeting today. Moving on, although fiscal year 2025 presented a series of challenges to agency operations, I'm pleased to report that NSF's financial statements were successfully completed. Today, we will hear the results of an audit of NSF's FY25 financial statements. We'll have time for questions on the financial statement audit after the presentation. We will also hear about the results of the required annual independent evaluation of the agency's information security program and practices, and an assessment of NSF compliance with the requirements of FISMA. Please note that Kearney's FISMA audit report contains confidential, unclassified information and is so labeled. If you have a question specifically about the contents of the FISMA audit report, you may send it to me via email, and I will get it to the OIG and Kearney staff for a response. Both audit reports and presentation materials are available in your committee book, which Ann sent out to you ahead of time. Acting Inspector General Megan Wallace will provide context and introduce the presenters. With Megan today are Catherine Delpreet, Counsel to the Inspector General, Teresa Hull, Assistant Inspector General for Audits, Inspections, and Evaluations, and Lisa Vonderhaar, the OIG Chief of Staff. In your hands.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for meeting with us to hear about the results of the financial statement audit, as well as the FSMA audit. I am going to immediately pass it over to Teresa Hull, who is the Assistant Inspector General for Audits.
Good evening, and thanks for inviting us to present on the results of the financial statement and FSMA audits. I want to thank both Brian Nelms and Phil Moore for attending the meeting tonight. They are each going to brief the specific portions of the respective audit engagements. So, Brian, over to you.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm going to share a slide deck here, so bear with me 1 minute. Oh, that did not work. Let's try it this way. There we go. Can someone confirm that they see that coming through okay?
Yep, looks good.
Great. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Nelms. I'm the engagement partner for the financial statement audits. We performed the audit for fiscal year 25. I opened this audit in March, briefing NSF management and the OIG, knowing that a lot of change was in front of us, and I opened with the word adaptability, and that sure rang true throughout the year. We started in March, like I said, but didn't finish when we normally do. We finished in December this year for a multitude of reasons, knowing the shutdown impacted that timeline a little bit. But what it didn't impact were the results of the audit, as Ms. Ward stated here earlier. So I do want to thank the NSF management group, as well as the OIG for working with us throughout this year. I can especially say that reaching an unmodified opinion for the 28th time was a challenge for sure, for many of the reasons that I think we're all aware of, but definitely congratulate everyone on the line. Additionally to that, last year I briefed the board here about a significant deficiency in information technology. So not only did that present a challenge last year, but even with everything going on this year, I'm happy to say that that significant deficiency was fully remediated. And so we did not report any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control. Additionally, the last report that we issue is a report over compliance with applicable laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements, and we had no instances of reportable non-compliance. On the next slide, here you'll see some of the findings and recommendations we did have. What I want to highlight on this slide is the 4 areas that are highlighted in green. Those are the findings that were fully remediated that led to the downgrade of the significant deficiency over information technology. So very good progress there. While we did have some new findings and some modified repeats, they didn't rise to the level of reportable conditions. So again, I just want to take the time to thank NSF management, really our last year on the contract this year. So we appreciate the effort that, again, management made in a difficult year, and we appreciated working again with the OIG. I'll take any questions on the financial statement audit before I turn it over to Phil Moore, who is the partner for the FSMA. Great. Hearing none, Phil, I'll turn it to you.
Great. So the second audit that we're going to go over today is the NSF FSMA audit. This is a mandated audit by OIGs. We get the requirements from DHS to aren't showing on YouTube. We get the requirements from DHS to assess the metrics. The metrics, for those that don't know, go from 0 to 1 to 5, 1 being defined, 5 being consistently implemented. According to the SIGI and the OIG, the processes, the guide we get, the requirement is a level 4 across all metrics based on an average rating, based on our own methodology, is an effective IT security program. This year, there was a downgrade in NSF from a 4 to a 3, and that's what this chart is going over. So overall, if you could see in the chart, you have the areas that were provided, again, from DHS around governance, identity, governance, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, each of the domains within FSMA, and then the maturity rating for the FY25 audit. As you can see, we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that were actually ineffective. And because of the ineffective rating for those 5, and based on the calculations, some quantitative, some qualitative, that did downgrade the overall security program for NSF from last year's effective rating to this year's ineffective rating. We do still commend NSF for all their hard work. There, as Brian mentioned, there was a number of longstanding findings that were resolved or a lot less risk. However, as you go to the next slide, all right, let's make sure. As you can see, we have some new findings came out this year about data classifications, privileged user accounts, findings, software licenses, self-attestation for their software inventory, and some non-compliant configurations in the NSF risk acceptance process. As you can see in the green, 2 NFRs from the prior year were remediated. So we do appreciate all the hard work that went into that. And even with the shutdown and everything that occurred and the changes occurred, we still got the metrics report out on time in July, and our NSF official Yellow Book performance audit was issued in December as this year, which was affected by the government shutdown. So saying that, any questions from the audience?
I don't see any hands. Can the staff help me? Do you see any?
I've got a question.
Oh, okay, here we go. Jeff, please.
Yes, thank you. Could you say a few more words about?
Any questions from the audience? Yeah, I see. I heard one from Jeff. So go ahead.
Yes.
Right.
He was
Okay.
just about to speak.
I'll try again.
I don't see any hands. Jeff is just about to speak. He still has a question that he wants to put forth.
I could hear Jeff.
Okay, thank you. Can you say a few more words about the NSF downgrade from a level 4 to level 3? What drove that?
Cool. There are a couple of things this year. So one of the things that does drive metrics year to year, which makes it a little bit hard to compare apples to apples every year, is each year there is a core set of metrics that are tested, and then supplemental metrics. So what this means is last year there were more metrics because it was one of those years to where you have core plus a number of supplemental metrics. So just from a simple math equation, if one year you have, let's say, 5 metrics to test and 2 fail, well, 3 passed, 3 is more than 2, you do some averages, and obviously some of that qualitative, some of that's quantitative, and that looks good and better for NSF. However, if the very next year those 5 go to 2, and just so happen those 2 are the ones that didn't pass last year and they remain to be problem, you went from 3 passed, 2 failed this year to now this year having 0 of 2 or some version of that as an example. So some of that, so this year we actually noted that in our Yellow Book performance audit report, that was a part of it. And then the other part of it was the new findings. There were new findings that we identified based on our testing this year, as saw by the slides, that also drove down some of the core metrics, some of the assessment of the whether you're a 1 through a 5. And then, but just to say that, just to put it in perspective a bit, 1 is ad hoc. That means you really don't have any policies. 2 is defined. You have policies, but maybe you haven't executed them. 3, you have executed them. However, 4 is where you're actually doing some monitoring of those policies. And so if we actually go back to the slide deck real quick, just to kind of finish this point, if Brian, you want to show that real quick. Well, while he's pulling that up, if you look at the actual metrics, out of everything, there is only one defined. So everything else is at least consistently implemented or managed and measurable. So that is good. They were pretty close to the, oh yeah, here we go again. So yeah, go back to slide 3. So we have one more slide down. And so each one, so again, right there it is. You can see right there, only one was defined. That means we found issues with our testing of the effectiveness and implementation of the controls. Everything else where we found a number of effectiveness concerns to where but they weren't enough to get to define, but also the testing per our audit methodology didn't get to measured and manageable. So that kind of puts it in perspective a bit. Hopefully that helps.
I think so. Are there is there an action plan to address these shortcomings?
So each year during our audit, we've gotten a very thorough corrective action plan. Usually it comes around this time, but we are historically, from our opinion as the independent auditor, we've been there 9 years at this point. They do take these seriously, and we've assessed that. I'll have to defer to NSF management on, the status of that plan, where they're at, etc.
Thank you.
Dr. Watford, I believe, yes.
Yeah, hi. Are these the same metrics that are used every year?
So yeah, so no. So what happens is you have a core metrics, and those usually, not 100%, those usually don't change. However, there are tweaks. A new executive order comes out on data privacy, for example. You might have a new metric that's tweaked. NIST 853 gets updated. That's when the core guidance, that's metrics are really based on. So there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to FSMA and cybersecurity requirements. So each year they've gotten a lot better when, these metrics that come out, they've gotten a lot better of not being completely different year after year, but they've gone to the core metrics, which I think are about 20. And then each year there's supplemental, and this past year the supplemental were only 5, but like last year the supplemental was more. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's much more than 5. So there is a change each year depending on the scoping of what comes out per DHS and their requirements, and then also SIGI.
So the one, I think it's 3.1 configuration management is at level 2.
Yes, correct.
Was that a metric from last year, or is this the first year we're looking at?
So all domains are always tested. So the domains don't change. Each domain has one too many actual
that are
metrics.
not listed here. They're not really.
Yeah,
listed
those
here.
are not listed there. So those are all at a more deeper level. There is publicly available information, so you can see what each, NSF, anybody could go on Google and kind of find the metrics. But each year, the underlying domains are the same, but they change. Last year, it was managed and measurable. So in configuration management in 2024, it was at a level 4. And this year, because of some of the changes in the metrics, as well as new findings, it did drop to the 2.
And those details are provided.
Yes,
So
those are all provided. So in July of every year, per the requirements usually it's July for the past number of years, we submit a very detailed cyberscope report to DHS that documents every single metric that passed or failed and a brief information on why. Then we also, per our auditing standards, submit a Yellow Book audit report to the NSF IG. It goes through management first. They review it. We have discussions if there's any disagreement, which there usually is not, and then we go through the process of issuing that. So the NSF OIG and management have the report and details on that slide deck, every single finding that led to this. And so our findings have background, condition, cause, criteria, effect, and recommendation. And each of those recommendations NSF tracks, with the support of management to say, okay, are you working on recommendation 1, 2, 3 for this particular finding? And that's a normal occurrence every single year.
And other than the timing, which I understand the government shutdown and all that, there were a lot of other interventions, I guess I would
Yes.
call it, in NSF operations last year. Were those, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I don't want to say were they taken into consideration, but were they noted for their particular impact that NSF had no control over? Does that make sense?
Yes, so some of the, without going into the weeds, like for example, I have the findings up in front of me. We did put in the cause, if we saw, like, for example, a staff reduction, and that because of that staff reduction, a control just wasn't performed. You know, if you have 50 things to do and you only have staff for 30, you only have staff for 30. We still have to report on that. That's still a finding, irrespective of the underlying cause. And what we tried to put that and give background and information to the reader, which is underlying in the cause area. So we do, in looking at it right now, we do have some causes that specifically call out staff reductions or other personnel changes that occurred during this year.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Another question from Scott Stanley, and then we'll move on.
Hello,
Scott,
I
we can't hear
I think
you.
you're on
We
mute.
can't hear you.
Yeah, you're muted.
It's difficult for me to keep track of if my mic's on or not. Everyone's touched on it's difficult for us, I think, to come in, on a annual or semi-annual basis and try to track where we are. You're an expert on it, obviously. You've got all the detail. But if there was some way to track across years, and it was an interesting point you brought up that the parameters within the different domains change every year. We could be flawless one year and the next year be non-compliant up and down. If there was some way to convey that in a manner for us non-experts in this realm, it would be very helpful. Maybe add another column or two with just a few things of, hey, change parameters, you were fine before, non-compliant this year, along those lines.
Yeah, that's definitely something that could be done and kind of show, all right, these are the number of metrics, as you can see, and we do actually have that, and we actually share that with the Inspector General, saying at the detailed level, here are the metrics that make up, and we have a very long spreadsheet on this where it goes through like 4 or 5 years where it says, okay, here's the metric. Year 1, it was tested. Year 2, it wasn't tested. Year 3, it wasn't tested. Year 4, came back and it failed, which is different than 3 years ago. So we do have that reporting, which is shared to the NSF, but we obviously didn't put on this one, this presentation as now. But great point though.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you again, Brian and Phil, for your informative presentation. If time allows, I think we do need to move forward. But an interesting question, if time allows later, is how the NSF results compare to those of other agencies this year, since it was such an unusual year. We'd be pleased and interested in hearing about that. But thank you, Megan, and the entire OIG staff and Kearney staff. Now we have an opportunity to discuss with OIG leadership the kinds of data sets on research misconduct that would be useful to CO's oversight responsibility. More specifically, I think the board would find the provision of longitudinal data most useful so that we can observe trends over time. OIG leadership is here to help think through data availability and resource issues in compiling data. I expect today will be the beginning of an effort to create sets of useful data and not the end of this discussion. As a reminder to committee members, the most recent OIG semi-annual report is in our committee book, where you can review the data the OIG collects and the committee reviews twice per year. NSF's OIG was established in compliance with the Inspector General Act of 1978 as amended. Per the IG Act, the OIG prepares a report twice a year summarizing accomplishments of the office during the previous 6 months, and NSF prepares a management response. These documents are shared first with the Committee on Oversight in open session, then with the board for its consideration. The board submits the semi-annual report and NSF's management response to Congress in May and September each year under a transmittal letter signed by the NSB chair. The most recent report was impacted by the government shutdown and was prepared late. I note that the contents of the semi-annual report are specifically prescribed by statute, so it's not possible to revise the semi-annual report itself. Longitudinal data would need to be displayed in a new report. Your committee book also contains a 2022 OIG report on promising practices for award management. This document may be useful in identifying data of interest because it describes research misconduct the OIG frequently sees. Our Vice Chair, Scott, first raised the possibility of collecting data in a form that may better enable the committee to see trends and conduct more informed oversight. So I'll turn the floor over to Scott for any additional thoughts he has on this issue.
Thank you, Wanda. And a similar theme to what I had raised previously, in that it's difficult to take these reports, on one instance, 1 year, and try to understand if it's good, bad, or indifferent. A few ideas that were thrown out. One example might be rolling up the result of single audits of a specific university or institution where a number of issues have been noted. Are specific problems increasing, decreasing? We appear to have like 20 or so of these each year, though I understand with the current funding situation that might be reduced, but it would be of value to note that. Another example might be to gather results over a thematic area over a number of years. We had discussed plagiarism in the past, different kinds of research misconduct. And one thing popping up, obviously, on all of our minds probably is the use of AI. I'd be horrified of the thought that entire results are being generated by AI and brought out there. We have to, unfortunately, now be on the lookout for that somehow. The influence of foreign talent programs, and even more specifically, any influence by specific foreign threats, for example, China, that we know is out there with an effort to try and garner our IP. And again, we have specific, it's almost like anecdotal without being able to track back over time. Is there anything that we can do with regards to infrastructure that would, let's say, reduce the frequency of some of these transgressions? I know there was more emphasis on training a few years back, and that seemed to have an influence on the PIs and their results. But is there anything else that you're seeing that you might suggest on how we're going about granting and then tracking the contracts that might reduce some of these issues?
Thank you for those questions, Scott. This is a great beginning of a longer discussion for sure. You did mention some of our prior work. So we did do a study with respect to the plagiarism over the last 10 years, some time back. I can't remember the exact date that we published that report, but it did get quite a bit of media and interest, and we had some trends that had been identified at that time with respect to undergraduate degrees and graduate degrees, the country of study and things of that nature. And you also mentioned the responsible conduct of research, which was another proactive that our research misconduct group had done. And that did have quite a great impact and has been implemented in a number of our recommendations to the agency, and the agency has accepted those recommendations, and the community has embraced that, and they are doing in-person responsible conduct research training, which is, we found in person is much better than an asynchronous approach. In terms of numbers and longitudinal numbers per se, are you guys, with respect to the 3 pieces to research misconduct that we're tracking on, which is the plagiarism, the data fabrication, and the data falsification, which by way of numbers, those 2 are substantially lower in terms of our intake and what we see. Most of it, a lot of our allegations are with respect to plagiarism. Are you thinking you want to see something maybe over the course of the last 5 years, something over during the pandemic? Is there anything that's spiking in interest in terms of like a time frame?
I would go 5 years max personally. This is just the way I look at things. I personally don't care much about what happened in 1967 or forever how back. And now, thank God, we're getting a little separated from the pandemic even. But just to establish some baseline within the last several years of, okay, here's where we are. And going forward, are we doing better, doing worse? What's the trend?
And I would say the other thing you mentioned, and I think NSF is still figuring this out. I know we're figuring out in the Inspector General community, and that's how to use AI and how to oversight AI. Neither of which are on terra firma to actually be looked at quite yet. But it is something that I know NSF has a working group on it, and we are. I just was at a meeting today where we're talking about putting a working group together underneath our tech subcommittee to talk about how to oversight agencies' use of AI. It is encouraged. It is, when it's appropriately used, when it is secure, and all of the tenets that are involved in that. So I think that's ripe for a look at some point, but not quite yet, because it's still mushy.
You haven't solved that yet.
That's a technical term. It's very scientific.
No, thank you for that background info. I'm glad to hear it's being discussed.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, thank you both. I'd like to see if other committee members have suggestions for data sets that could assist the board and the IG as well. The committee is aware, as Megan just pointed out, that it will take time and resources to compile various data sets. So I also invite OIG staff to participate fully to assist in identifying data that can be compiled and shared in ways that don't create undue burden on OIG staff. I don't see any hands at this time. Any further questions? We've got a couple of good ideas here that we can initiate taking up.
Excuse me for interrupting, but Wanda, can I turn it over to Teresa actually to talk about the promising practices report that our office put out a number of years back with respect to just to give some context there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Megan. So in 2022, our office issued a report that was called the Promising Practices Report. And the intent there was to highlight for the recipient community the types of findings that we were seeing across the board. And I can talk through some of those just for context, but this particular area of work, these reviews of NSF award recipients, are just a part of the portfolio of work that we do. We, of course, have to consider our resources and split it across our actual oversight of NSF and the NSF award recipients. So some of the common themes that we've seen are like unallowable expenses. Travel related costs are often something that came up throughout the body of work that we looked at. Internal controls for indirect cost rate application were not always there, which is extremely critical when you're looking at the award allocation. Oftentimes we saw inappropriately allocated expenses or inappropriately supported or inadequately supported expenses. So that's an area that could easily be addressed through training, as someone earlier mentioned. Also, non-compliance with policies and procedures, just the general terms and conditions and understanding the different uniform guidance applications. So those are some of the overarching trends that we found for that report. We are often every year thinking about how we can stretch our oversight capabilities more to do more work. This is definitely an area that we have consistently looked at and plan to look at again in future fiscal years, because we take seriously our responsibility to oversight those dollars that go to the various institutions.
Very helpful. Thank you very much, Teresa. And again, remind our committee members and board members that that report actually has been provided to you for greater review, etc. So thank you all for the useful suggestions. And finally, I note, well, I'll move on. Thank you again for that. I hope you've had a chance to read the Chief Financial Officer's quarterly report, which is also in the committee book. I note that following the departure of Janice Coughlin-Peaster, Caitlin Fife is the CFO. The office of the CFO has been reorganized, and we hope to hear about advances in financial and operational support in the future. What we've heard thus far, and I look to my staff colleagues if there are other things that we want to take note of in terms of summarizing steps for the future. Our FSMA colleagues have pointed out to us that corrective action plans are historically submitted to look at how various issues that have been found wanting or needing a greater attention can be addressed by the foundation. With regard to research misconduct, which we just spoke about, I think it was Scott in discussion with Megan, suggesting the establishment of a 5-year baseline and to look at trends from there. And Megan made the interesting point about how to use and oversight agencies' use of AI, noting that it's really quite too soon to fully address this at this time, but working groups are being set up to take a hard look at those issues. And Teresa highlighted for us some of the things that can be found in the Promising Practices report, which we will all take a look at, pointing out several of the kinds of issues and topics that are brought to the fore in that report. Do our staff colleagues have additional summarized items for action? Anne, thank you.
Wanda, you did a great job. I think that what Teresa mentioned provides a very good opportunity for staff to talk about data sets, because I think the work that you did there can be used as kind of a baseline for compiling 5-year sets. In any event, I see staff talking to see what is available with a, you know, a non-crippling amount of burden on staff.
Thank you
So
for
we'll
that.
be looking into that.
Okay, all right, very good. And we'll pick that up also in a future oversight meeting as that progresses and develops. So the Oversight Committee has a full agenda over the next few months, and I'm looking forward to our work on these subjects. We expect to reconvene next month to receive a presentation on the OIG's 2026 audit plan for feedback. The committee also plans to review NSF's FY25 annual performance goals progress report. For this discussion, we may hold a joint meeting with the Committee on Strategy, which works with NSF on the development of future annual performance goals. And as you know, the board's recently published report, Merit Review for a Changing Landscape, offered several recommendations and actions for both NSF and the board. So we're also looking forward to begin addressing implementation of these items at a future committee meeting, including possible reimagination of some of the traditional kinds of information that have been included in like Merit Review Digest, etc. And this could possibly align quite well with the full board's ongoing work on Next Gen NSF, for example. So your best thinking will be called upon as we delve more deeply into the report, Merit Review for a Changing Landscape. For members of the public watching today's meeting, I'd like to encourage you to tune into a briefing of this report, Merit Review for a Changing Landscape, on next Wednesday, February 25th, during the board's quarterly meeting. Thank you all for your participation today. This concludes our business for the Committee on Oversight, and the open meeting is now adjourned at 5:44 Eastern Time. Thank you, everyone. See some of you next week.
Mhm.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Wanda.
much.
Wanda,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
bye,
you.
everybody.